And I would like us to look at this resurrection of Jesus Christ and why is it or how is it that our eternal soul gets access to God, our Father? How is it that we get made ready or presentable to be in the presence of God? And what is it that allows that? A lot of the stuff is taken for granted. No rational historian or theologian would argue, was Jesus a real person? Well, maybe an internet theologian, but a person who's gone to school and who has done the research, it's kind of not really up for grabs, especially since this is the year 2019 after Jesus came. And the fact that when it comes to Jesus Christ, very few people just argue about his teaching or say, oh, that's not good. Why? Because he told us to help people who are disenfranchised, to help the poor, to forgive others, to release ourselves, to go on, to overlook mistakes in other people. And they don't debate the teachings of Jesus. They don't debate the existence of Jesus. Then why is it they get all wigged out at the mention of Jesus in a discussion? And I'm wondering if it doesn't have to do with this very exclusive claim that Jesus made. We kind of live in an inclusive world where everybody is included. Everybody who shows up gets a ribbon. We kind of live in an inclusive world. Anyways, I'll behave. Now, so is included. Everybody who shows up gets a ribbon. We just sort of come on, everybody's in here, and we've included that kind of in our religion. All religions are the same; they all go in the same place. It is true that there are good components and good contributions from most religions, but to go and extend that past that point and to say that all religions are the same is a problem. And Jesus Christ really said something very argumentative. Now, for you guys watching online, I'll be right back. Said something very argumentative. Now, for you guys watching online, I'll be right back, but this thing's tearing my ear off. I don't know what it is about you guys, but more people watch online than sit with you. So there's something you said or did, but it's good to have you online. It's good to have you in person. One of the things that might make Jesus controversial is that first verse we put in there, and it's when Jesus was getting ready to leave, and he said, look, guys, you know where I'm going, and you know the way. Thomas said, what? Time out. I don't know where you're going, and how can I possibly know the way? So Jesus says, I'm the way, I'm the truth, and the life. No one can get to the Father except through me. So where am I going? I'm going to the Father. And how do you get there? You have to come and connect with me to get to the Father. So that was a pretty exclusive statement to be made in an inclusive world where everybody sort of is headed the same place. Now, I should tell you that doesn't work in other places. Like if you would like to talk to me on the telephone, you actually have to dial my number. Random numbers won't reach me. And it's kind of like that with God. There is an approach to God, and Jesus said, I'm the approach. And this is how you do it. If you look at two of the religions, for instance, I'm just going to spend 2 minutes on this, but Buddhism doesn't really believe there is a God, but you go through this continuous rebirth until you end the cycle, and there you are, wherever there is. And so you contrast that with Hinduism, where they do believe in a God. It's kind of an impersonal God, and you approach them through deities and statues and those kind of things. And so the first two, you would say, Buddhism, which doesn't acknowledge God, Hinduism, provide a forgiveness of sins, or they don't provide a way to have a fresh start and to clean the slate and approach God. Then if you look at Islam, they do have a personal God. The thing I like about Hinduism and stuff like that is the concept of karma. That means if you cut me off in traffic, yours is coming. You just up the road, somebody's going to get you. But I don't really enjoy that. But in Islam, they have a personal God. Allah, and your approach to Allah is based on your good works and your religion and your effort as you go to serve God. Or you can move into some of the more modern New Age stuff where it's a little ethereal, and we just learn to be at one with the universe and unite our spirits with the great spirits around. And as a follower of Jesus Christ, my approach would be to look at the resurrection and to see that there is a personal God who loved me so much that he sent his son to help me connect with him. And we are made right with this personal God through Jesus Christ. Now, if we look at what he said here, he said, if you want to get to God, your Father, you come through me. And so as we consider the ministry of Jesus Christ. Those are the claims of Jesus Christ. Now, if we consider the ministries of Jesus Christ, it doesn't matter where we come from, but you have to look at Jesus Christ. Why? Jesus didn't leave a religion. In fact, Jesus hates religion, and that's where I picked up mine. I hate religion too. And so we pick up a connection to God through the person of Jesus Christ. And you can't look at other Christians. Why? Because some of them are jerks, and some of them are nice. And so you can't judge the ministry of Jesus Christ by those who follow Christ. They're not all as good and looking as me, and they're not all as generous and magnanimous. Some of them are just turkeys. So, and we don't look to pastors. Why? A pastor will mess with your brain.
You know something? I was suspicious. Oh, that's a lot better. I noticed some of you people were delighted, were happy, were enjoying yourself, and then the mic come on. What? Oh, man. I'll get them to turn it off in a minute. But here, we have to look just at Jesus Christ. There's not a religion that represents Jesus Christ. Rather, when he was speaking to the scribes and Pharisees, he explained why it was that he came. And if you want to look at that next verse, consider the ministry of Jesus Christ, you're going to find that the scribes and Pharisees, when he was doing weird stuff, Jesus, look, we can criticize them for not accepting Jesus, but he was eating with tax collectors, prostitutes, sinners, and Canadians. And it was just, you don't do that kind of thing. And they said, why is Jesus eating with those weird people? And so Jesus heard it, and there in Mark chapter 2, why does he eat with tax collectors and sinners? And when Jesus heard this, he says, look, it's not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. I didn't come to call the righteous, those who are so good. I came to call those who aren't so good. And his mission was to come to people who were being ignored, marginalized, disfranchised, and only the wealthy could really come to God. You couldn't go to the temple all that time. You had a job, and it was very difficult for a working person to actually get access to God the way it was designed here. And so he says, I came for those people, the common people, the working people, and the people who are rejected. So as we look at the ministry of Jesus Christ, you have to understand right off the beginning that he came for difficult people. Now, my wife would never admit that. I'm so wonderful to live with, but it's after Jesus. He came for people who knew they weren't good. He came for people who knew they were violating God's laws. And he came for a specific group of people, not those who were religious, not those who had sort of made up an approach to God. In fact, he didn't come to offer us a religion at all. We kind of made it into a religion, but that's not what he offered. He offered us a relationship to our Father through himself and his presence and his Spirit. And so the whole concept is that he came to personally connect us to God, our Father, and his Father. And his ministry, the same as Buddha didn't come to start a religion. Buddha didn't even believe in God, but people turned it into a religion. Jesus Christ didn't come to start a religion. We made it into a religion, but it's a relationship, and that's what he offered you, personal access to the very presence of God. Later, Paul says, look, you're a child of God. Accept the privileges. Come stand in the very presence of God. Pray to him. Talk to him. You have access like nobody else. You're his child. So in the ministry of Jesus Christ, you also can look at some of the miracles of Jesus Christ. And the interesting thing is now, we say, well, they didn't know about death. How do we know he was? Look, they were smart enough to know if a person was alive or a person was dead. I mean, this is not rocket science. He's not passing the mirror test. He's dead. And when Jesus was doing these miracles, even those who were trying to kill him didn't deny he was doing it. They knew he was dead and now he's alive. They knew that that guy had sat there with broken legs for 40 years, and that if he got up and walked, that was a miracle. Nobody's arguing saying, well, was he really crippled? Everybody says, you nut bar, he sat at the temple for 40 years. Of course he was crippled. Everybody knew the miracles were genuine. It's fine for us to say, well, we're a little more sophisticated than that. How do you know his bent legs were really bent? How, they didn't think they were bent. Nobody challenged the miracles because they saw the evidence. In fact, those who later wind up killing him, they didn't say he's faking miracles. They said he's got to stop these miracles or he's going to put us out of business. There was no problem. And the existence of Jesus Christ is not really for debate. I mean, this is the year 2019 after this guy came. And his miracles were never challenged at the time. And so his ministry, where he took dominion over nature, he took dominion over the spirit world, he took dominion over illness, and he showed that I'm the master, I'm the creator, and he demonstrated who he was, which was why his following was so large at the time. So his miracles were then, and his miracles continue today. I think that there was a kid named Dylan, and this goes on. How many of you have experienced the touch and presence of God in your own life in a way that can only be described as intervention? Yeah, I'm not talking about you went shopping and he provided a convenient place. I'm talking about this can only be explained. Somebody intervened in the situation and God gave me grace. A kid named Dylan, he wasn't feeling good. He went to the local hospital. They did all the tests, all the diagnosis, and they said, Dylan is in trouble. We believe he has this rare disease. So they called a special institution which deals with this, and they said, forward us your info. So they did all the x-rays, all the tests, all that stuff. They sent it down to them, and they said, that is correct. You have properly diagnosed this, and he needs to come here, and he needs to come right now, not tomorrow. Get him here now. So they got an ambulance, 3.5 hours. This was in Texas. He went from Fort Worth to somewhere. And so they shipped him right away, and as soon as he gets to the clinic where they're going to deal with it, they run all the tests over again. The only problem was they had both sets of tests. One showed the disease. 3.5 hours later, it didn't show the disease. It was gone. And I don't like us to help God. Either it's true or it isn't, and I prefer when we say I was sick here's the sickness. And we don't have to exaggerate for God. He's going to do what he's going to do. But I do like it best when it says, here's the x-ray, 3.5 hours later, here's the other ones. So when he gets there, they say, did you send us the right ones? They said, yes. Is this the number? Yes, that's it. Okay. We got the right one, except for one problem. Our tests are totally different than your test taken hours ago. Now, part of this story is that there was an ambulance attendant who drove down with them for 3.5 hours, and she was so impressed with the family and the way they handled the crisis and all that stuff that she went to that people's church, and she went to the church of the parents that were with Dylan, and it happened on that Sunday that the pastor had Dylan in church and told about the fact that he left Fort Worth, and when he got to the clinic, the symptoms were gone. He was alive. There was no danger. She didn't know that. She just drove with him for 3.5 hours. Her job was to keep him alive. She dumped him off there and went back up to do more paramedic work. That was what she did. So when she comes to church and this kid is standing there, she knew it was impossible because she saw the x-rays at Fort Worth. She knew he was sick. And there he was in church, disease-free. It so impacted her that she gave her life to Jesus Christ and said, if that's what he can do, I'm going with him. She was baptized. Her son was baptized. Jesus Christ ministry is as every bit vibrant today as it was then. He has the same power to overrule and intervene. He didn't suddenly become powerless or leave the earth and let us fend for ourselves. And many of you, one of the big miracles is, in insurance claims, they call it an act of God. If you were in Texas a while ago, you had an act of God on your insurance claim as it flooded your house, wiped it out, and this is an act of God, an earthquake or a flood or lightning or all that stuff. No, an act of God is when he changes the heart of someone who is nasty into someone who loves and is gentle. An act of God is when you have two people in a relationship that need a referee and it is really not working out, he comes in as God their Father and changes their hearts until they have a hot, viable, functional, loving marriage. That's an act of God. And I know some of you, and some of you have had an act of God in your own heart, for which we're all thankful. Many need to have that miracle of the change that is brought by Jesus Christ when he gives us his Spirit. The old is, how many of you, the old is gone, the new has come, and it's a radical change in your life? Can I see? Oh, go ahead. Shame the devil, tell the truth. Good. Yeah, I think that in my life and in many people's life, we won't mention any of them by name, Juan, but some of them really needed to change. And Jesus comes in today, as he did then. The old moves out and the new moves in. And that is the ministry of Jesus Christ. So there we have. And now you look at the resurrection of Jesus Christ. If you consider that event, that was the one that got me. That was the one that I have a problem here. I didn't believe in God, and I didn't care whether Jesus Christ ever came or not because, look, the guy was dead, now he's alive. No, he isn't. You can't do that. And so I don't even have to consider that. I don't have to think about that. That's nuts. That's for Christians, and they're nuts. And that's for pastors who manipulate Christians into believing that garbage. And so I don't have to consider that resurrection stuff at all. And besides that, if it was true, it would have been terribly inconvenient. So I'm sitting at a business. I'm sitting there having a smoke, and the trucks are going by. I'm watching the truck and another truck and another truck and another truck and another truck. They're building this complex over just down from where I had the store, and boy, they're putting a lot of dirt. Where's that dirt coming from? Truck after truck after. That's a lot of dirt. And since it was a coffee break, I got thinking, can you move so much dirt from there to there you can make the earth wobble? How much does the earth weigh? How much would that take to wobble the world? That's a lot of stuff. There's a huge galaxy with 100 billion stars, and at least that many or more. And then there's 100 billion galaxies with 100 billion stars. Where in the world did all this stuff come from? And all of my presuppositions for excusing God were suddenly melting away. And I had to deal with the fact there's a problem. You can't have something from nothing. And I'm sitting there in theological terms, analyzing this, and I'm going, oh, shoot, there probably is a God. And what do I do now? Well, there may have been a God, but dead people don't come back to life. So I started to search and looked here and looked there. And then this was the one that stopped me. The resurrection of Jesus Christ. If he did not rise from the dead, you better tell me what happened. Because you look at Peter, he was a brave man. This little girl, 12 years old, says, you're a disciple. Am not. Aren't you? Am not. And this is the leader of the church. You speak like a Galilean accent. Do not. He was not going to be identified any way, shape, or form with Jesus Christ, the disciples, or the ministry. A couple of days later, he's standing in front of the people who killed him. This is the Supreme Court. This is the Sanhedrin. This is the bigwigs. And what does he say to them? You killed the author of life. I need to tell you that's not a smart thing to do. Just up front, you don't stand in front of the Supreme Court who killed Jesus and say, you killed the author of life. This wasn't a man, this was the Son of God. But God raised him from the dead, and how do you know? We saw him. And so this is the greatest wimp of all times, standing in front of the most powerful court in a Jew's life. Excuse me, but if you don't mind saying this, you're a bunch of murderers who just murdered God. That didn't end well, but anyways. Then, how do you explain, when we're in where we used to live, there's like three maximum securities, a medium security and low security, whatever it is. So all the professors that we took courses from were working in the university, telling us stuff. We were taking courses on criminology and stuff. And so one of the ways that you know, and one of the things that they do when they bring these guys in, is they will flip on each other if it's to their benefit. And the first guy that says, I just held a flashlight, he killed him. Yeah, of course. And so they turn on each other. Do you know what I'm saying? He did it, I did. They won't keep their story straight. You may not believe this, but people who cheat and who steal and stuff like that, do you know that sometimes they don't tell the truth? It's true. They don't. Sometimes they don't tell the truth. How do I know? I can see their lips are moving. And so they're making the stories up, and they separate them, and they see if they tell the same story. They see if they've memorized it. And these guys would not flip on each other. It would not change the story. And Thomas, who says, I don't know where you're going. Thomas, who says, yeah, sure he's alive. Show me the body. I want to see the holes. I want to see the spear mark. I want to see where they put it in his feet. Of course he's alive. Jesus says, here's the evidence. You know, our faith is not only for stupid people. Our faith is for people who will challenge the facts. Thomas challenged the facts. And Jesus said, here it is. This is the evidence. And all of the disciples saw the evidence, and they would not say they hadn't. In fact, Thomas, they said, hey, Tom, we don't really want to kill you. It's messy. Plus, we're going to put you on this sharp stick through your belly, and somebody's got to clean your guts up, and it just isn't worth it for us. Why don't you just say you didn't really see him, and you can go, don't collect $200, just leave. He wouldn't take a free pass on not seeing Jesus alive. Why? Because he saw Jesus alive. And sure enough, they stuck a pole in his belly and let him die. Some of them, you could burn them. You could crucify them upside down, some of them. That's not a good idea, by the way. And the cross wasn't really like this. The cross was more like a T. And I wonder how they did that to Peter, upside down. And so it didn't have this thing on there. The Roman cross is, why, you could probably rest your head there. They don't want you doing that. And so also, it wasn't that far off the ground. It was close to the ground. So now you see them and it says, they spit at him. Yeah, he was 100 yards away. No, he was there. They put these crosses in. When they said they spit on him right in his face. And so you could do anything to them. They wouldn't deny that they'd seen him alive. Why? Because they saw him alive. And they weren't afraid. They said, yeah, he was dead, now he's alive. But because he is alive, I too will live. Now, what are you going to do to me? Because I'm not afraid to die, because I will live. And so each one of them, you could threaten them with death, but it didn't bother them because they knew they would live. What are you going to do with a nutcase like that who's not afraid to die? They turned the world upside down because they said, he was dead, I saw him alive. Because he is alive, I too will live. Do your worst. And not one of them would change their story. Why? Because they saw him. John says, can we tell you about what we've seen with our own eyes? Can we tell you what we've handled with our own hands? And what we saw and what we felt and touched was Jesus Christ alive after they crucified him. And I will not change my story. And out of the 11 that were left, Judas sort of took an early exit, but John died of old age out of Patmos, but the other 10 were all killed. And I don't know about you, but if I'm kind of making somebody up and they're going to burn me alive, I'm going to say, oh, I'm just kidding. Come on, can't you take a joke? Can't the soldiers go away? It was nothing. We just got together and we thought, hey, wouldn't it be neat if we say he came back to life? And so we made it all up. They said, no, light the fire. I saw him. He was alive. And I'm not afraid because I'm going to be alive too. So let's get it on. That is what built the faith, was they saw him alive. In fact, Paul was talking about it. He says, you guys, he said, the 500 saw him at one time. In fact, they're over there in that village. You don't believe me? You go over and talk to the people who saw him alive. There's 500 of them over there. Don't take my word for it. And so they went, Jesus was dead, now he's alive. That's the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And that's what stopped me, was I had to deal with the fact this guy really died. This guy really came back to life. And as inconvenient as that is, I have to deal with that reality. That's what happened. Now, how does that impact me? The reason it impacted me was because suddenly it's obvious that God has sent his son to come to earth, because the whole earth is contaminated by this thing called sin. God didn't create cancer. God didn't create the evil heart that abuses one person, abuses another, and families are torn apart and atrocities are committed by nations. All of that is a damaged creation of God, not created by God. And so sin is in the world, but that same sin is also in me. And that cannot be brought into the presence of our Father. So what do we do with it? I have to put it on Jesus Christ. And in fact, 700 years, it says the iniquity of all was laid on him. He said, all we like sheep have gone astray. We have all done our own thing. We've all been led by sin. And now we have to put that on Jesus Christ so that when we stand before the Father, we are acceptable. So how do we get into the presence of the Father? We deal with the sin issue in our life that he made provision for through Jesus Christ. This may come as a surprise for you, but you're not good enough to be in the presence of God. It takes perfection, and there are very few of us here on earth. Everyone else, and Jesus told you, he says, look, you want to get to God? You have to be perfect like my Father in heaven is perfect. And so you can get to God two ways. One of them is to be perfect and claim to be perfect. Just hope your wife isn't the next person in line. The other rest of us have to use Jesus Christ and his perfection to be acceptable to God. That's what the resurrection was proving, that everything he said was true. And when he was on the cross and he said, Father, these guys don't know what they're doing. They don't know who I am. Let's not be adding up their sins. Take this one off. And he said those words of victory, the last words he says, it is finished. I'm coming home. And he gave up the ghost. And the earth shook. Why? Their creator was on the cross, and there was darkness and quakes, and the temple curtain that kept people out of the access of God was tore open, and from that time on we had access to God. And then Peter ran around and says, you killed him. Now, here is the crux. How do we deal this? We are made right by our belief that this happened. Our faith is in Jesus Christ. Don't put your faith in yourself. If nobody's told you yet, I'll tell you this morning. You are not ready to stand in the presence of a holy God. You and I, all of us together, must put our trust in Jesus Christ, and that gets us access to the Father. Now, let's look at the last one, which is consider the teaching, which is basically we're made right with God by placing our faith in Jesus Christ. It's the part, that last sentence that I just said, none of us is good enough. And this is true for everyone, no matter who we are. And this is where it breaks down. It doesn't matter who you are, whether you're wealthy. What was the song? I Ain't a Senator's Son. There were certain people that escaped, and there were certain people that had to pay the price. It doesn't matter how good you are. It doesn't matter how bad you are. You don't get a free pass, and nobody's good enough. All of us come through Jesus Christ. So it's not whether or not, sometimes we say, well, if you got bad behavior, no, it has nothing to do with your behavior. It has to do with Jesus Christ. It's not because you didn't swear in the golf course when you put it in the water. That has nothing to do with it. By the way, Jesus asked me to quit playing golf, but apparently I don't know what he was dealing with. I was embarrassing or something. So he said, just quit it, David. And but I paid for all those lessons, but you're still not that good, and you keep saying stuff. So, okay. It has nothing to do with that. It has your faith in Jesus Christ. And in fact, you can even get mad and yell at your kids on the way to church on Easter Sunday morning. And Jesus Christ is there because it's his holiness that we use and not our own behaviors. Now, this morning, I don't think any of us is here by accident. I can think of my own life where there were times where God had to intervene or I wouldn't have made it. Does that make sense? He came for you individually. You're here this morning because he wants to speak to your heart. He wants you to move your belief system from your head to your heart so that you can come alive in the Spirit of God. And he has manufactured and created and protected and directed our life. Paul was speaking in the Acropolis, and he said, look, God started with one man, one woman, and he directed all time and put everybody where they should be, when they should be there. And he said, you're here today by the direction of God. And he started his message on God's coming to earth. And so how did I get here? I can think of several times I was Do you guys remember the Marlin, the American Motors Marlin, with the sloping back, and they didn't have enough weight on the rear end, and it kept passing you? Yeah. One day, I was with a friend of mine, a doctor's son, and his dad had a Marlin, which we claimed. So we're going down the highway, within the speed limit, of course, and it was raining, and I looked out the window, and there's the rear end of the car going by. I need to tell you, that's unsettling. And so, you know those posts, they have posts in the highway, on the side of the road, and they had those cables that run through there. We started going down those things, and we hit a post and a cable in front and the back and the side and the rear, and it just kept ding, 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 going down like that. And I was a passenger, he was driving. If I was driving, this would have never happened, okay? I never had, well, I wouldn't have lost it this day. So the car starts spinning, and the first impact is my door, and it boing, spun it out and popped the door open, and we didn't wear seatbelts back then. It threw me out. On the way out, I grabbed hold of the handle on the outside, and I had to hold my legs up or my bum would drag on the ground. And so I'm holding on the outside of the car like this, and the car's going down the road, crushing the front, crushing the side, crushing the back, and it crushed right behind me. It took the skin off my head and my neck and shoulders. The post was so close, and it just kept going around like that. 2 or 3 of those, and you get really cantankerous. But after the car stopped sliding, we were close to where my dad lived, and I decided I'll call Dad. It's not that he would be surprised again, but I said, this car came and they stopped, and everybody in the car is looking at me, and they are so weird. I mean, they're staring at me. I'm going, what is going on? So I went to the side of the car, and the window's down. There's 2 parents and 3 kids, and they're staring at me. I'm going, guys, I need you to call my father and tell him to come and pick me up. This won't surprise him. This happened before. Just tell him to come, pick me up, tell him where I am, tell him we'll meet him at that service center up there. Hey. Could you phone my father and tell him to come pick us up? They're not, these guys are rude. I mean, they're just staring at me. I'm going, now, guys, I need your help. Would you do a favor for me? Tell my father to meet me up there. Here is his number. Nobody's doing anything. If I have to crawl in this car and slap you, get with it here. Finally, the lady said, you're dead. I just saw you get killed. No, I'm alive. But I can think of times when God had to intervene, or I wouldn't have been. Does that make sense? Why am I here today? Because he confronted me in the front of my window with dump trucks. How did you come to the Lord? Dump trucks. And then I'd have never made it if he hadn't protected me from my own stupidity. We used to be able to drive cars that went fast, and you didn't have to wear seatbelts. And we went every weekend to play hockey. And there was this highway between where I lived and Ottawa, the capital. And so we would load up every Friday night. We would work, and then we would call each other. We'd all get in the car, and we'd go play hockey. And so you got 4 guys and all the hockey equipment, and the car is squatting down. It just won't hardly carry the load. And so we're going to play hockey with a loaded car that is going, this car would go well over 130 miles an hour, which it did sometimes, accelerator stuck. And so this was Friday night. Everybody's trying to get there. There's lines of traffic. I'm talking sometimes unbroken for a mile. And those people were so rude, they didn't get over, they didn't do anything. I had to drive 50 miles an hour. Except that back then I didn't. I obey the speed limit now, but back then, and so I'm looking up there, and I'm thinking, nobody here wants to die. I bet they all get out of my road. So I pulled it out, and I just laid it down, and I let it go. And we are way over 100 miles an hour. I won't tell you how fast we're really going, but statute of limitations is up, and I'm in a foreign country. So this line of cars is coming at me, a long line coming this way, and I'm passing a long line going that way, and there's 2 lanes, and I'm the third car. And I'm wound well over 100 miles an hour because I couldn't stop it anyway, so might as well let it go. And sure enough, these guys hit the ditch, and I went right. I told you that, guys, hey, get up off the floor, come on. I would say God had a plan for my life when I was out of control. He said, if he can come and I can use him, every mother in the world should be encouraged. In fact, in the shop there, these 2 ladies come in and they said, now we want you to know we pray for you. In fact, we meet every morning and we pray for you every morning. And I said, well, Bob came down from Toronto last night and I accepted Jesus Christ as my Savior. And they said, we'll keep praying. It's impossible for me to come to Jesus Christ. But I did. In front of Lino's restaurant, on the side of the road, in a 302 Mustang Boss. After that whole resurrection stuff I couldn't get out of, after the fact that it's too much floating around and something doesn't come from nothing, and I had to admit there was a God, and I gave my life to him. That was the only rational thing to do when I tracked down the facts, was to say, this guy Jesus came to